Hi, my name is Brandy Horn. I'm an Instruction and Reference Librarian at the Greg Graniteville Library. Thank you for watching this session. This is for Dr. Lynn Rhodes' English 101 class. To get us started, I want to show you very quickly a few things on the library's website. If you ever need help with research or citations, there are a few ways that you can get in touch with us. One of the most prominent ways is on the library homepage on the right-hand side. You'll see this red tab that says Chat with a Librarian. If you click on that, a chat box pops out where you can get help Monday through Friday, 24 hours a day, and Saturday and Sunday from 8 a.m. to midnight. And you can click that to close that back. Another way you can get in touch with us is under the center search box. If you click the first red box, which says Ask a Librarian, that gives you some other options for getting in touch with us, including the chat box again with our schedule. There's also this Book a Librarian option, which I'll talk about in a second. And then you have this Email Us option where you can click Link. And that takes you to a form. Now, in this form, you would put your question and indicate Ask a Librarian via email and include your email address and your contact information. And we will respond to you generally within 24 hours. The length of time it takes us to respond will really depend on when you submit your question. If you send us a question at 11 a.m. on a Tuesday, there's a good chance you'll hear from us pretty quickly. But if you send it at 7 p.m. on Friday, you may not hear back from us until Monday. So just keep that in mind. This is not necessarily for instantaneous help. But you can obviously get in touch with us through chat if you need help fairly quickly. This Book a Librarian, if you feel like you need enough research or citation support to actually schedule an appointment with the librarian where we can dedicate up to 30 minutes or an hour to you, you can click the Schedule a Virtual Appointment. And at this point, you can select the type of appointment, research, citation, off-campus login, anything like that. If you don't really care which librarian, and any librarian can help you with this particular assignment, you can leave it on no preference, or you can select the librarian. Again, my name is Brandy Horn, and select a date, and select the time, and continue, and go through the process, and you'll get a confirmation email. We'll both get a confirmation email showing that the appointment has been scheduled, and you will also get either in that email or a follow-up email a link to a Microsoft Teams room where we will meet remotely together, because that is how we're handling research help this semester, is we are meeting online through video chat. There is always the option to speak on the phone. It's not listed here because the way we're staffing our offices during the pandemic has made it so that we can't guarantee there's someone in there at all times. But if at any point during chat or email or whatever it's decided that a phone call is necessary, that's definitely doable. We just don't have the phone number listed here. So you have multiple ways to get in touch with us. Other information on the library's homepage that you should know about. We have this off-campus access box. And this provides information for how to access library resources from off-campus. You will use for your username the first part of your email address. Your VIP will not work when it comes to accessing resources off-campus. So the first part of your email address and your password is your Blackboard password. If for some reason this does not work, this page also has information for troubleshooting. We have this nice infographic on the right-hand side. We've got everything written out here, and we have a video on the left-hand side. So whichever mode of information works best for you. We have 3 different ways to communicate what you need to do in the case of troubleshooting. Chances are you will either have to reset your password or you will have to reclaim your account. If you have to reclaim your account, that could take 10 to 15 minutes. Resetting your password is pretty quick. So just know you have to log in with the first part of your email address, and your password is your Blackboard password. If you run into problems, go through these steps provided for troubleshooting. If you go through all of this and you're still running into problems, you will need to contact the help desk and see if there is an issue with your credentials. Okay. One more thing on the library's homepage that I would like to show you right now. Up here in the upper right-hand corner, we have a link that says research at the top, and if you'll, in the drop-down, click citations. We have citation information, or information for the most common types of citation styles, and for this class you'll be using MLA. And so we have an MLA guide. We have this quick reference guide, which talks about the core elements and gives examples of the most common types of things that you would cite. And across the top, we have a citation for an article from a database. And it shows you, it labels the individual components of the citation so that you can see how they all fit together. Okay, so this is a handy guide if you need help crafting your MLA citations. You should have a copy of EasyWriter, but this is available to you as well. Also in this guide, we have video tutorials that walk you through the steps of citing these different sources. Description of citation basics, again, the core elements and how they work, and then some resources for paper formatting. So on the library's homepage, remember, you can chat with a librarian. You have other options for reaching out to a librarian under Ask a Librarian, information for off-campus access, and then also under Research, the citation information. Okay, so all of this is available to you on the library's homepage. Now, for your assignment, you will be choosing one or more articles that your professor has assigned, and you will be writing a research argument where you take a stance on some issue of social and or economic justice. Your works cited page will have at least 5 sources, and included in those 5 sources will be the articles that you've chosen from the assigned readings. Okay, and whatever, if you choose 1 article from the assigned readings, you will need to find at least 4 more. If you choose 2 articles from the assigned readings, you will need to find at least 3 more, so that you have at least 5 articles. The articles that you choose, in addition to your primary source articles, we're going to refer to the articles that you choose from the assigned readings as primary source articles, because they're the ones that you are responding to, analyzing, or looking at more closely. The secondary articles are the other ones that you're going to find to support your argument. So the criteria for your secondary articles is that they be credible and reliable. Okay, and we'll look at a specific tool to help you make that determination. Your paper should be, I think, 5 to 8 pages long, and you'll be using MLA citation style. And we looked at where you could find resources to help you with those citations. Okay, so 5 to 8 pages, at least 5 sources, including the articles from the assigned readings that you choose to respond to. The other articles that you find need to be reliable and credible, and you're going to use MLA citation style. If you have questions about your assignment, please reach out to your professor and get clarification. The librarians cannot help clarify assignments. It's up to you to reach out to your professor to do that. Now, I'm going to guide you to a research guide that's available through our website. So starting on the library homepage, the center search box defaults to this Books and More tab. That is how you would search the catalog, but we're not going to look at that. There's a databases tab, which is an alphabetical listing of all 300 plus databases that we have access to. So if you know exactly which databases would be useful to you, you can always go to that tab. what we're going to click on right now is this Research Guides tab. And we're going to come back to this a little bit later. But in this drop down, we have an alphabetical listing of guides by subject. And each guide contains resources where you would find information on that subject. But we also have a couple of other links down here. We have course guides. We have View More Research Guides. We're going to click on this View More Research Guides link. Okay. Here we have that list that we saw in the drop down, the alphabetical listing of subject guides. But at the top, kind of in the left corner, we're going to click All Guides. And these are pretty much all of the guides that we have created for you. And these are also alphabetically listed. We're going to scroll down, and in this right-hand column, we're going to click on the Research Process Guide. If you forget everything I tell you today, which hopefully you will not, but if you do, this guide walks you through the steps of the basic research process, from topic selection, and my apologies for the dogs, how you decide on a topic, exploring a topic, refining, research, okay? But right now, I'm going to look at this Evaluate tab. And what we have here are some tools for evaluating information, including this stoplight evaluation tool, which is a very basic top-level assessment tool for looking at or deciding what is generally acceptable for academic research and what is generally not acceptable for academic research. We have this nice video from Vanderbilt on distinguishing the difference between peer-reviewed articles and popular articles. And so basically it's the difference between, like, popular would be magazines and newspapers, and peer review would be journals. And we're going to talk about that in a little bit. But the tool that we're going to focus on mostly for this assignment is this PATS evaluation tool. PAT stands for Purpose, Authority, Timeliness, and Scope. And what each of these are different criteria for you to look at when you're looking at information, especially that you encounter online, maybe via a Google search, to decide whether or not it would be helpful to you as a source. There's no information that's wholly good or wholly bad, right? Anything can be used or anything can be useful as long as it is contextualized appropriately in your research. And that is up to you to make that determination. And looking at these different criteria and the questions that we have presented under each criteria, these are ways to kind of help you make that determination for yourself. So when we talk about purpose, we want to know why the source was created. Was it created to entertain? Was it created to inform? Was it created to educate? Was it created to persuade somebody of something, or to trick a person, or was it created to sell you something, right? What was the purpose of this particular piece of information? What audience was it created for? Was it created for just the general audience? Was it created for an academic or professional audience? Was it created for students, right? These are, something to pay attention to. And then the question here, is it scholarly or popular, and does this matter? Does this matter in the context of the specific assignment? For this assignment, your professor isn't necessarily requiring peer-reviewed sources, just credible or reliable. But if you chose peer-reviewed sources, you can almost never go wrong there. Those are always appropriate for academic research. It's just whether or not the source provides the information that you need. And then under authority, who is the author, right? Is it a person? Is it a corporation? Right? Because sometimes you'll have documents that don't necessarily have a specific author, but maybe they were produced by like a government organization or something like that. Or perhaps it's a corporation. If you're looking at research on global warming and it's produced by ExxonMobil, that's an important piece of information, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that you could not use that article, but it is something to keep in mind and something that you would have to acknowledge and contextualize in your paper. Okay? If you're looking at a person as an author, what are their qualifications on the topic? Are they someone who can speak authoritatively on this thing? If the person has a PhD, but let's say the PhD is in divinity, could they actually talk about the the medical uses of birth control, right? So even if a person has credentials, are they actually relevant to the topic? Do they make the person an expert on that particular topic? So when you're looking at authority, who is the author? Is it a person? Is it a larger entity? And then what is the relationship to the topic? Are they an expert in the field? Do they have credentials? Do they have a vested interest that would create a sort of conflict of interest that would need to be acknowledged? These are things to look at when you're looking at authority. When we talk about timeliness, is there a publication date? If you're looking at a website, sometimes there are no publication dates, or sometimes there's no like update date, revision date. If you're looking at one of those websites that was clearly made in like the late 90s, early 2000s, it's got sparkly stars in the background, probably don't use that website. It doesn't seem like it's been updated in a long time, and that information is probably not going to be very reliable. So look for a publication date. When was it published? When was it last updated? This is important, more important in some fields than others, but generally it's a good idea to be as current as possible. And if something does look hopelessly out of date, just don't use that. When you get further on in your college career, depending on your major, particularly things like nursing, when you do research papers in those areas, they generally limit you to the most recent 5, maybe 10 years, because it's very important in that area to have the most current research possible. So paying attention to publication date can be very important. And then scope. Does the article that you're looking at, the information, does it provide too much information or too little information? Sometimes you're looking at something that's like half a page and doesn't really give you much, and that's probably not going to be very useful. But there could also be times when you're looking at a research article, an actual peer-reviewed research article, and perhaps it has the kind of information that you need, but it's written for other experts in that field of study, and it's very high level and it's hard to understand. There's all this stuff about statistics and things that you just don't get, right? So perhaps that has too much, or perhaps that's too intense. So what you could do then is potentially look online to see if some entity like a magazine or a newspaper wrote up an article covering the type of stuff that was addressed in the research article. So, you've seen these articles that say things like, researchers at UCLA have found da-da-da-da-da-da-da-da. And they very neatly summarize the results of the research and the larger implications in a way that most people can understand. So if you find something like a research article that you feel like that's got the information you need, but you don't understand it, perhaps look online to see if there's anything that summarizes that research in a way that makes it accessible to you. So when you're talking about scope, is it something that's too big or is it something that's kind of too small? And looking at the specificity of the information provided. So when you come across information online, you go through these criteria and you ask yourself these questions, and then at the end, you decide whether or not something is actually useful to you. Again, there are no yes or no, or there are no right or wrong answers. No information is so inherently bad that you can't use it. It's just a matter of acknowledging and contextualizing in your paper. One thing to pay attention to when you're thinking of like with purpose is the question of bias. Often we think of bias as being a negative thing, but it is not inherently negative. You are reading articles that have bias. They're making arguments, and therefore there's bias. You are writing a paper or a response that is also making an argument. So your paper will have bias, right? So bias in and of itself is not bad. You just need to contextualize it. You don't present the information necessarily as fact, but you do present it as a potential perspective or opinion or view of something, okay? So just keep that in mind. PATS is a useful tool for assessing information. And again, it is ultimately up to you to decide whether or not something is useful to you. Now, I like this image that we have in this guide of the information universe. So we've got this image of the iceberg, and we all know that phrase, it's just the tip of the iceberg, where you talk about whatever you happen to be looking at the time is just a smaller part of a much larger whole, right? So when you look for information online through, using Google or whatever your preferred search engine is, you'll find a ton of information. You do a search and you get millions and millions of articles, and you think, huzzah, I am a successful researcher. But the thing is, most of the information that you find online is not going to be particularly useful to you in terms of academic research, okay? You're going to find like stuff from websites commercial websites like Amazon or Walmart or whatever. You're going to find social media, lots of social media. You're going to find YouTube videos and memes and other pictures or whatever, and you're going to find just random websites and blogs, and blogs are of varying quality, but there are some really good ones. You can find some free full text access to like things like magazines and newspapers or whatever, but really the vast majority of what you find online is not going to be overly useful. There are really good websites out there, things like Pew Research or Gallup or whatever, useful websites where you can explore different perspectives on topics like procon.org and whatnot. But you either need to know to go to those websites, or you've got to wade through a lot of stuff to get to the good information. I will show you a pretty handy Google search tip towards the end of this lesson to help you target specific information that might be useful to you. But again, the information that you find freely available online is, just like I said, a small portion of what's out there. All the rest of this that's below the waterline, the rest of this iceberg, this is the kind of stuff that you would access through the library, through the library's website, that you get through databases that are very expensive and that we pay for. And we do this to help support your research. So through these databases, you get access to full text peer-reviewed journals. So thousands of peer-reviewed journals, millions of articles, also full text access to newspapers like New York Times, and things like that, ebooks, right? All of these different things that cost a lot of money. That's what you access through the library, okay? Something else to keep in mind when you're thinking about the kind of information that's available out there for you. When you're looking for information through the library, we are specifically collecting information that is geared towards supporting academic research. So everything you access through the library is generally going to be better quality across the board than what you would access through a Google search. Another thing to keep in mind is that the information that you would find through the library is organized in an objective way to make it easy for you to find information. When you're searching for information through Google, there is no system of organization. What you have are algorithms that are operating in the background that look at things like your search history and popularity of specific websites and items and whatnot, and they try to come up with a results list with items that they think you will click on. So you on your computer and everyone else in your class on their own computers could enter the exact same search terms into Google and all get completely different results pages, right? Because they are tailoring them to you. Whereas if you go to a library database like Academic Search Premier and you all enter the same search terms, you will all get the exact same results, because the information contained within the library is organized, and it's organized according to keyword. And we do this to make it easier for you to find information. Okay, so when you're thinking about the world of information or the information landscape, there is a ton of stuff that is freely available through Google, but you got to wade through a bunch of stuff that's not appropriate for you to find the good information. Whereas if you go through the library, the information that you find there is generally going to be appropriate for academic research. It's just a matter of deciding which is most helpful to you and what is not. Again, the stuff through the library is organized, whereas the information you find online via Google is not. So these are just things to keep in mind when you are trying to decide where to get your information. Now, I mentioned a bit ago about popular versus peer review. When we talk about popular publications, we're talking about things like magazines, we're talking about things like newspapers, right? These entities have editors and maybe section editors, and those are the people who make the final decisions as to what gets published. Generally short kind of articles and written for a general audience, right? When we talk about peer-reviewed or scholarly information, we're talking about information that is literally the best quality information currently available, okay? And I say currently because our knowledge base, our understanding is constantly growing and evolving. So what we knew 50 years ago may not be what we know now. So when we talk about peer-reviewed information, best quality information currently available. Now, when we talk about peer review articles, we're talking about articles that have gone through a peer review process. What that entails is you have a person who is an expert in a field of study. They conduct research, they gather all this information, they analyze it, come up with some conclusions, write this up in an article, and then they submit it to a journal. And that journal then sends that article out to other experts in that same field of study, and they look at it and they think of it in terms of the research and scholarship in their field, and they decide whether or not it meets the standards of research and scholarship in their field. They look at the actual methodology, they look at the conclusions, they look at the writing, and if they decide that yes, this is a good article and this should be published, then it will be published. If they decide that no, this should not be published, then it won't. So you have an article that was researched by an expert, written up by that expert, and then sent out to several other experts to evaluate it before it ever got published. Okay, so when we talk about best quality information currently available, we mean that very literally. Okay, so if you have a situation where your professor has limited you to just peer-reviewed articles, which is not the case here, but you obviously can use them. But if you're in a situation where your professor has limited you to peer-reviewed information, it's not because they hate you or because they want to make your life difficult. But if you use peer-reviewed articles, which is better quality information, you will produce a better product. You will gain a better understanding of your topic because you're using better, more reliable information. But also over time, the more you work with peer-reviewed information, the more you learn what good quality information looks like, how to identify it, and how to work with it. So that when you are no longer able to access library resources, because when you graduate, you won't have access to this anymore, you will be in a better position to wade through the not very good information online to find the good stuff, okay? So the more you work with it in college, the better able you will be to locate it and identify it on your own when you no longer have access to library databases. Okay, so in this research process guide, right, under the Evaluate tab, we have some options for helping you evaluate information. If you need an overview of popular versus peer-reviewed again, this video is very helpful. We also have, again, the paths under this tab, but on the right-hand side, we also have a PDF. So if you click that, it'll pull up a PDF that you can print off. Okay, so we have this information that's available to you through the research process guide. Now, now that we've done that, we go back to the library's homepage. At this point, we need to think about preparing to search, okay? Presumably, you've chosen your articles and you've read your articles, okay? So what I'm going to do, okay, this worksheet is to help guide you through the research process for this specific assignment, okay? And it goes through the different steps, and we're going to work through this. I'm going to show you how this works right now. So the first step of the research process is to identify your topic. Now, in the case of this assignment, you're choosing articles, you're reading them, you're responding to them, or you're developing an argument based on what you find there. So under number 1, what article have you chosen? And what is the main topic of the article that you want to address? Right? So whatever article or articles that you've chosen, you could write the titles or just abbreviated versions of the titles up here. And let's say that the article I'm working with is the model minority trap. Okay. And the main topic of the article that you want to address, let's say at this point, I'm not entirely sure how specific I want to go, but I know it deals with racism, right? And the whole model minority concept, which is new to me, but I know that it deals with racism. So I'm going to start with that. I'm just going to start with the general topic, right? Now, once I've identified what I'm responding to in my topic, right? The second step of the research process is to explore your topic. Now, this can usually take a couple different directions. If you're dealing with a topic that you don't know anything about, then probably the easiest thing to do is to Google it and read broadly. If there's a Wikipedia entry, read the Wikipedia entry so that you can begin to get that foundational information that you need to begin to understand your topic. The different things that it encompasses, the different concepts or keywords that fall under it, maybe people who are involved, all these different aspects of the topic so that you can start getting that foundational information you need to understand it, but then also begin to pull together a vocabulary that's used to discuss the topic. That vocabulary is important because that's where your search language comes from, right? You're learning these different concepts, but you're also learning the language used to articulate these concepts. You can take that language to the library databases and find more information, right? So if you're dealing with a topic that you don't know anything about, reading broadly is a way to go. I said Wikipedia, but you know, anything else online that has information, click on it, read it, see if it's useful, move on to the next thing. For this assignment, that you've kind of already done that to some extent, and the fact that you have articles that you were assigned and that you've read, right? So whatever you found in those articles may have been your introduction to a concept. Like in the case of what I've chosen, the model minority trap, perhaps that's the first time I've heard that concept, right? So by reading that article, I have already done some reading on my topic, right? So another way that you can explore your topic is to engage in some brainstorming. And one method of doing that is to create a concept map. And when you create a concept map, generally you start off with like a circle or whatever in the middle of a page. And in that, you would write what your topic is, right? And let's say I just start with racism as my topic, okay? Now, for the purposes of my concept map, what I want to do is anything that I can think of relating to racism, right? Anything I associate with it, anything I think I know or don't know, right? I can So I would kind of branch out from the topic. So when we think about racism in relation to that specific article, right, police brutality is the thing that the author is talking about. That's what has started, that's what inspired that article, right? An incidence of police brutality. And then, excuse me. So we have police brutality, we have racial profiling, right? Is something else that comes to mind for me, right? And as I do these, you know, I'm just like putting them out there. And then other things that might come to mind. We have that concept of the model minority, right? So I include that. The author also talked about history, right? So the history of racism in the U.S. to some extent. And the specific things that the author talked about in relation to history in the U.S., we had the creation of the Immigration and Naturalization Services, so the INS, right? We also had the railroad, when bringing over people from China to build the railroad. We also had internment camps for the Japanese during the war. So we have all these things that branch off of racism, right? And if you want to, you can draw lines, right? So I'm showing you how you could do a concept map in Word, but honestly, this is going to be so much easier if you just use a piece of paper. But I can't really demonstrate that clearly on a piece of paper with the computer, right? And then here we have, right, we can go to these, but police brutality, racial profiling, I can think of these as being grouped together, maybe under law enforcement. Right? So maybe these would tie to that. But looking over here at model minority, there are several things that I can associate with this as well, right? Here we had the history of racism, right? And Immigration and Naturalization Services, the railroad, internment camps. We can do the same thing with model minority, right? I think of this in terms of, and this was addressed in the article, like college students, right? So college, maybe college students, okay? And different things that we associate with that, maybe like admissions, right? Maybe academic support. Because either I've read this somewhere or I just assume this, but students that are viewed as model minorities, like especially with college students where you have like, oh, the stereotype that Asians are good at math, they may be overlooked or assume that that's the case, that they will be good at math and therefore don't need academic support. And so if they are struggling, it may be missed or overlooked. And I used the word just then, or a couple things just then. We have stereotypes, right? We have stereotypes, and then talking about like math and science, right? So all of these things that I associate with this, I'm just grouping around this concept of model minority. Okay, so I've got my main topic, which is racism. I've got police brutality. I've got racial profiling. Both of those fall under law enforcement. Here I've got history of racism, and these things that branch out of that. But then this concept of the model minority, which the article itself is about. And while it talks about it in a larger picture, me being an academic and working in academia, I tend to think about college students. And so my mind goes to college students, and then therefore admissions and things like academic support and stereotypes, and kind of branching out of that, things like Asians are good at math and science. And so there are all these things here that I relate to that concept of the model minority. Okay. So this is what we've got when we talk about concept mapping. Each of these could grow exponentially. Like under police brutality, you could list specific instances or people who are victims of police brutality, or police who have perpetrated it. You could talk about police reform. You could talk about all these different things, racial profiling, all the stuff that comes out of that. Maybe things like broken windows policing, and like impact on minority communities, and things like that, arrest rates and whatnot. So there are all these things that you could just continually branch out. And the purpose of a concept map is to figure out, just to kind of get on the paper, what do you know or what do you associate with your topic? And then once you've gotten things written down, you've done like a brain dump on the page, you can take a step back and then start to look at how things relate to each other. And because that's the strength of a concept map. It's a visual representation of the relationships between ideas. And so here, like, I had police brutality, I had racial profiling. I realized both of those could be grouped under law enforcement, And so it allows me to kind of look at these things. And as I'm looking at this, I realize that although I have racism up here, I am more specifically interested in that concept of model minority. Okay, so I'm going to adjust my topic a little bit. I want to focus on that idea of the model minority. And from what I've read in the article and things that I know are associated with it, I think my argument, and I say I think because once I start doing research, I may change my mind, but I think my argument would be that this concept of the model minority is harmful to all minorities. Right? Asians in particular, since this tends to single out Asians, but I think this could be potentially harmful to all minorities. So that is probably the concept or the argument that's going to drive my research going forward. Okay? So the concept of the model minority is harmful to all minorities. Okay. I'm going to let that be my driver for my research going forward. Okay. So the first step of the research process is to identify our topic, which we've done. The second step of the research process is to explore our topic, right? And this is one way that you can do that with the concept map. And for this is a good approach. Another thing that you can do, Another thing that you can do is refer to the article itself. Here, I've got a copy of the article pulled up. You can read through it and pull out any concepts or language or ideas that stand out to you. If I'm interested in the model minority and its impact on Asians and other minorities, I would go through and I could even type in, do Control F and get this little search box and type in that phrase, model minority, and it will highlight that phrase each time it appears within the article, and I can read the text around it. Okay, and if there's more information that would be useful to me to pick up on, like examples or how this manifests, or the way, just any way that this author talks about it, that I go back to the article and I pull those examples out. Okay, so that's another thing that you can do to kind of prepare for searching, is to go back and see what the author is actually saying about the concept or any other things that you're interested in with that. Another thing you can do, as I scroll down to the next page, we've looked at the article, we've done a concept map, okay? In your own words, what argument does the article make, or do the articles make that you've chosen if you're looking at multiple articles? What is your argument, right? I've made a statement further up. So here in this space, I could restate that. And then what exactly am I interested in relating to my topic, right? Or what are the subpoints, I suppose, of my argument? This is harmful to all minorities. Why do I think that, right? And I could just write that down. And then part of your assignment is also to anticipate or to address potential counter arguments. So what are some things that people would say to counter your argument? Okay, and you can write that down in that space. All right. Once we've done all this, if you take a few minutes to do that, right? Once we've done all this, we can look back over the article. We can look back over what we've written, right? And we can circle or just kind of like highlight specific things that would serve as potential search terms, right? And so, you know, racism, potentially, it might be too broad, but I can highlight it. Model minority, that's the crux of my topic, so I would highlight that. And then these different things that I have in my concept map: math and science, stereotypes, college students, admissions, academic support. These are all going to be useful search terms. So, model minority, college, admissions, admissions, stereotypes, academic support, math, science. What else did we have? And I'm talking about all minorities. So when we talk about all minorities, we would include maybe African American, students, Latino students, right? So if we want to explore all minorities, we would probably include those ideas as well, right? So this is enough to get me started, right? Now, I've identified some potential search terms that I might use, right, to find information. At this point, I give you a blank table. And let me adjust this a little bit so that all that fits on one page. I give you a blank table so that you can think about how you might combine search terms to find information. Now, when you look at this, you could do this. I mean, you could do this whole worksheet on your own paper. You don't have to print this off. But this table is super easy. Like I said, it's just a blank table. You can just write this on a piece of paper. The idea behind this is to think about the kind of information that you need and the different combinations of keywords that you would use as search terms to find that information, right? When you're filling out the table, you want to keep one concept per box, no more than one concept per box. And each line is a search, right? Each line is a search term, or is a combination of search terms, right? So I always recommend starting off broadly. So I would probably start with my actual topic, model minority, and see what happens, right? And chances are I'm going to get a lot of information. So I'm going to add another search term, right? And I'll make that a little smaller. Okay. So model minority in my first search box, college admissions in my second search box. And you'll see when we get to the database that when you go in, you will have multiple search boxes to look for information or to enter search terms. And so you can have model minority in one search box and college admissions in the next search box. And therefore, you are telling the database that you want articles that contain both of these concepts, right? So it's model minority and college admissions, right? Now, I always recommend thinking of different ways to express things. I said one concept per box. So just in case, model minority, college, and then admissions. Maybe split those up. We'll do them together one time, but then also do them separately and see what happens. See if you get a different number of results. Excuse me, model minority and just college and see what happens, right? So again, what you're doing is you're combining different search terms in ways that will allow you to explore your topic from different angles, right? Maybe we want to look at the admissions process, right? Like the concept of the model minority and its impact on the admissions process. Maybe we want to look at it in terms of, you've got this concept of the model minority. How does that impact Black students, right? How does that impact Latino students? How does that impact Asians specifically, right? So you go through and you combine all these different search terms in different ways. And then you go through when you get to the database and you do all of these searches. And any article you find that looks like it could potentially be useful to you, email it to yourself, go through all the results in that list, and then move on to the next search, right? So what we have through this whole process is we are preparing ourselves for searching. We're identifying our topic. We're thinking about our topic and what we know, what we think we know, what we don't know, anything we have questions about. We're identifying some potential language to help us find information. And here we're looking at how to combine that language in ways that will allow us to explore our topic in very specific ways, right? And this empty table, when you fill it out, gives you a chance to think about, okay, what information do I need? What words can I combine to get that information? And then you can come up with a logical progression that you have charted out already to get you started. As you start researching, you'll come across more language that could potentially be useful to you. If you come across more words, you can include them in your search strategy. Okay? So it's important to be open and be paying attention to the kinds of things you're encountering when you're searching, because you could find other concepts or other language that could be useful to you. Okay? So, with this worksheet, step 1 of the research process, you identify your topic. Step 2, you explore your topic. We did that with a concept map and kind of a directed free write. That's kind of what this is called, where you just write stuff down. So a directed free write. And then based on the information that we come up with there and also reading the articles, we've come up with some potential search terms. We've identified search terms, and we looked at different ways to combine those search terms to find information. Okay? Hopefully this is making sense. If you engage in these steps, these kind of pre-research steps, once you get to the library's databases, it'll be so much easier to find information than if you were to just jump in cold, right? And just start splashing around. If you go through all this first, once you get into the databases, you can usually you can begin searching more effectively or efficiently from the beginning, and you're better able to find information without getting frustrated. Okay, and then finally, once you go through that, then you can begin searching. And we're going to transition back to the website, but I just wanted to show you here. I've got a section on finding databases, and it gives you information leading you to exactly where I'm going to show you on the website. And it gives you just quick bulleted points that I'm going to cover when we're in the database, and then talks about off-campus access again,
and then searching online, including the search tip that I'm going to show you for Google searching. So this worksheet will be available to you. Your professor will have it, and you can use this as a guide. I'm going to minimize that, and I'm back on the library's homepage. Okay. Now, on the library's homepage, that path that worksheet leads you to, in the center search box, we're going to click the research tab, the research guides tab. Now, the databases tab will get you to the databases that I point out. But if you don't know which databases in the future, if you don't know which databases would be most useful to you, the research guides tab is the way to go. Because if you're doing research in chemistry or business or education, those guides will have the databases that would be specifically useful to you. Now, for the purposes of a class like this, we have created the Contemporary Issues Guide. So from the drop-down, I'm going to select Contemporary Issues. And in this guide, I'm going to click the Find Articles and Newspapers tab. Now, there are two databases in here that I'm going to show you, but you can use any of the databases here. I'm going to show you Opposing Viewpoints very briefly, and then Academic Search Premier. Opposing Viewpoints in Context is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. It presents different perspectives or viewpoints on topics so that you can explore them. Now, one of the characteristics of this database that makes it a good place to start research is that it is browsable, meaning that you don't have to have a firm grasp of language to find information. You can search for things, but you don't have to have language necessarily in mind. Down at the bottom of the page, we have the major categories and some sample topics, but you can also click on here, browse all 484 issues. There's also a place at the top right here where it says browse issues. Either of those will take you to the same place. And that takes you to an alphabetical listing of all of the topics that are addressed in this database. We had mentioned police brutality, right? That's listed up here. If we scroll down, we're thinking about racism. We have race relations, which might be useful, racial profiling, racism. So all of these things are related to that. But also, I happen to see on the left, affirmative action. I'm talking about how the concept of the model minority is harmful to all minorities. And so affirmative action could possibly be one of those areas where that is the case. So if I click on this, here we have like a general overview of affirmative action. You can click the read more and get the background information, like where it came from, main ideas, right? Affirmative action in education, if I'm talking about college and admissions and things like that, in the context of employment, right? So we have this general background information to help ground me in this topic, right? So I can read through that, but then the primary thing in this database, excuse me, we have a collection of information, different types of information all pulled together, academic journals, we have biographies, we have images, we have videos, we have news, we have magazines. There's a whole bunch of stuff here, right? But what I think is particularly useful, we have featured viewpoints, but then we have all the viewpoints. There are 72 different viewpoints presented here relating to affirmative action. Now, 72 is a lot. I'm probably not going to read 72. You can scroll through though. That's not a terrible number. Some things have, a few hundred. But if you want to limit it a little further, on the right-hand side under filter, you can click subject, and you have all these different subjects that are applied to these different viewpoints. And so if I wanted to focus specifically on racial profiling, or if I wanted to focus specifically on college students or universities and colleges or education policy or any of these, and this is a good place to get some potential search terms to use in the other database we're going to look at, Academic Search Premier. But let's say I look at college admissions, right? And I scroll through
and I see, you know, I've got 30 viewpoints, which is much more manageable, and I can scroll through and see what kinds of things I have. If I want to, though, if I want to get more specific, I can click the search within, and let's say I'm interested in looking up Asians specifically. So now I'm down to 7 viewpoints, and I can scroll through and see if there's anything here that might be useful to me, right? And I have a few different viewpoints. Asian Americans complicate the argument for affirmative action. I probably would want to read that. Asian Americans support affirmative action. Affirmative action programs discriminate against Asians. Colleges should not use race-sensitive admission policies. I would probably want to read all these different viewpoints. Now, the reason I would want to do that is perhaps you have an idea. You've read the articles that were assigned reading. You've identified a topic. You have a general idea of what your argument is. But these can help you to articulate your argument more clearly. They also can help you to identify the counter arguments that you would need to address in your paper. Okay, so using opposing viewpoints, if your topic is something that is addressed in this database, will help you, again, articulate your own argument, but then also provide you with counter arguments that you can incorporate and address in your own paper, I hope that makes sense. Again, helps you articulate your own arguments, trying to figure out what your argument is and how to state it, and then shows you what the counter arguments are so that you can address those in your paper. Now, all of that said, I really like this database for exploring a topic and helping people get a handle on their topic and get a handle on their arguments. And again, it gives a selection of information from different types of sources. If there's anything in this database that you want to use as a source, please reach out to one of the librarians and let us help you. This database is very difficult to cite. And if you reach out to us, chances are we're going to find whatever it is you're trying to cite in another location, and we will cite it from there instead. All right. This is a very, very difficult database to cite. So reach out to us and let us help you with that. But generally, I just recommend this. I recommend this to help get you started with your research. My apologies for the dog barking in the background. But again, like I said, this is a good database to go to get a handle on your topic and your arguments. I'm going to close that. Back to my database list in the Contemporary Issues Guide under the Find Articles and Newspapers tab. Now I'm going to click on Academic Search Premier. And like I mentioned before, here we have multiple search boxes. And here it will allow us to combine search terms. I generally encourage people to start off broadly, right? So I'm going to type in model minority, but I want you, when you're doing your own searching, to pay attention to the autocomplete options, right? Model minority myth, stereotype, right? And I'm just going to stick with model minority right now, but whatever you see there, if you see multiple things that are useful to you, write them down, because those can become search terms for you. And I'm just going to search this by itself. And we see that I get over 1,400 results. Okay. Now, at this point, on the left-hand side under Refine Results, I can, if I want to, limit to scholarly peer-reviewed articles. That means I will just have these that say academic journal, and it will take out anything that says periodical. Let's see if there are any on this page. No. It'll take out anything that says periodical, which will be newspapers and magazines and things like that. So if I limit to peer-reviewed, it takes out all the magazines and newspapers. Okay. Now, you'll see items like this that say find it. You have those that have the PDF and the HTML full text, and then others that don't.
Okay. If it has find it, that means that that item is not available in this database. If you get a bunch of those in your results list, you may want to limit to full text. I don't necessarily recommend limiting to full text immediately, but you can limit to full text, and that is on the left-hand side as well, right? So that brings us down to 433. If you want to limit by date, maybe for the purposes of my topic, I don't want anything older than 2000. I have this date slider on the left, so I slide it up to 2000, right? And so I've gone from 1400 results to about 400, right? 400 is still a lot, but it's a lot more manageable, okay? So that is just to show you these options for limiting on the left. I'm going to go back. Model. Okay. So we have model minority, right? And again, we're at over the 1400 results. We have gone through the process of generating some potential search terms, right? So I can refer to those on my worksheet. I know I had model minority and college admissions. Now, again, we can see there are all these autocomplete that I might want to look at, but I'm going to stick with college admissions first. And I get 4 results. And I would go through these 4 results and see what I have, okay? Once I've gone through those, remember I said it's probably worth, it's worth separating these out. So model minority, college, and admissions. And I go from 4 results to 10. So splitting those up actually got me a few more results than I had before. As I scroll through, if I see anything that looks like it could potentially be useful, right? Racial politics, resentment, and affirmative action. I have the full text PDF. Also, I have the HTML PDF here, or the HTML full text here as well. And my search terms are bold all throughout the article. So it's a quick way to kind of go through and see if it's talking about the concepts in a way that's useful to me. But I also have this abstract, which is going to be a summary or overview of the main points of the article. So if I come across an article in the database that looks like it might be useful to me, the title looks good, if the abstract looks good, on the right-hand side under Tools, I can click Email, and I can enter my email address here. And then usually I copy and paste the article title into the subject line. And then we'll see these checkboxes here, the HTML and the PDF will be attached to the email that I send to myself. And then I click Send. And I will get an email with this article attached to it, and I will be able to access this from anywhere. So if you do this, every time you find something that looks like it could potentially be useful, send it to yourself. That way you have access to all of your research in a central location that you can access anywhere, anytime. Okay? At that point, I also recommend creating a folder in your Outlook, and everything you email to yourself, move it to that folder. Do not try to read each article as you come across it to decide whether or not it's useful. If the title looks good, the abstract looks good, go ahead and email it to yourself. Move on to the next item in your results list. And then once you've exhausted that results list, then go back to your table of combined search terms, and then come up with the next search term combination, and then search that. Go through that results list, do the same thing. Once you've gone through all of your different searches and gone through all of your results lists and sent yourself everything that looks like it could be helpful, then go to your email and then start to go through and read all the articles and see what you have. And you'll see that some things are more useful than others. But only when you have it all together like that is it really, that's the best time to start deciding what is useful. If you try to read through each article while you're in the database searching, it'll make this part of the process go by so slowly. It'll drag and it'll seem like you'll never get through it. And it's easy to get lost or just kind of lose track of what you've searched and what you haven't searched if you try to read each article as you come across it. So again, if a title looks good, click on it. If the abstract looks good, on the right-hand side, email it to yourself. Now, also on the right-hand side under Tools, people tend to get excited about this Cite button. If I click on that and scroll down, you'll see that there is an MLA citation, right? But it is ultimately up to you to produce a correct citation. You cannot rely on the databases to do that. And they almost always have some sort of error in their machine-generated citations. The thing that Academic Search Premier and all the other EBSCO databases get wrong, which is extremely frustrating, is the fact that for the database name, it says EBSCOhost. EBSCOhost is never your database name. Okay, this is important to keep in mind. EBSCOhost is not the database name. And we know that because we scroll to the top and we have the EBSCO logo, but EBSCO is the vendor from which we buy it. It is telling us that we are searching Academic Search Premier, and that is the name that you would use. This is important because when we click the Choose Databases next to it, all of these databases are EBSCO databases. So if all you say is EBSCO, we don't know which one you actually used. Okay? You want to indicate the one that you actually have checked. So for your database name, it will never be EBSCO. Your database name is Academic Search Premier in this case. Okay, so this Cite button is very much a buyer beware situation. You'll need to go through the rest of it. Looks like it's probably fine. You'll notice that it has a DOI, a Digital Object Identifier, right? And that's included in the citation there. Usually the DOI is also listed down at the bottom under the abstract. If you have an article that has no DOI, you will have to have a stable URL to include in your citation. So again, under Tools on the right-hand side, you'll see a button that says Permalink. And if you click that, a box pops up, presumably, yes. A box pops up that says Permalink, and there's a link there that says Easy Proxy and whatnot. That is what you will use in your citation. You will not use this web host, whatever up here, because that link will die. That will not work. You will click the permalink button under Tools and get this link that starts with Easy Proxy, and you will include that in your citation, right? Because what this link does is it takes the reader, in this case your professor, to the login page, allows them to authenticate, and then allows them to access the article. If you do not provide this link that allows for that, then it's just going to take them nowhere, okay? Because in order to access this article, they have to have access to our databases. So this link allows for that. Just using this link up top will not, right? So as you come across items in the database that look like they might be useful, email it to yourself, right? Again, you have the Cite button, but you got to fix the errors and permalink in case there is no DOI. All right. So going back, again, there are just 10 results with this search term combination. I would go through those 10 results and then move on to my next search. Maybe I just do model minority in college. And when I do that, I have 289 results. So let me try combining Black students. Okay. And I have 5 results here. And I go through and see if there's anything here that could potentially be useful to me. Okay. Said 5 results. 5 results is obviously a manageable number. I would just go through all these and see what I've got. Now, that's showing you how to combine different search terms to get manageable numbers of results, right? Because if you just start with, just model minority, you're going to get a ton of stuff. But let's say that you weren't sure how to limit, or maybe you're looking for some other potential search terms that could be useful to you. So we type in model minority, and we have over 1,400 again. On the left-hand side, if you don't know how to limit it any further, we have this option called subject thesaurus term. And this is similar to what we saw in opposing viewpoints, where what this is a list of key terms that are applied to the articles in this results list, right? And this will give you some options for limiting to more specific things. You can click one thing at a time. You can click multiple things. But again, what you have are some options to limit further. You can focus on Asian Americans. You can focus on stereotypes. You can focus on minority students. You can focus on group identity, academic achievement, Asian American students, higher education, mental health. Like if you wanted to look at the mental health aspect of the model minority, like how that weighs on students, mental depression, race discrimination, social support. There are all these different options here. So if you were not able to come up with other search terms on your own, you can write down a bunch of these that would be useful to you, right? This concept of assimilation might be something that you look at, prejudices, okay, interpersonal relations. All of these things any of these might be useful, okay? Let's say I'm specifically interested in academic achievement. I update, and now I have 38 results, right? And 38 results, again, is a manageable number of results I can go through and see what's here and see if there's anything useful to me, okay? So this database is user-friendly, and it wants to help you as much as possible. It covers all subject areas, so no matter what you're researching, chances are you will find something that's relevant to your research. It's a good place to start no matter what your subject area is, right? And you can take what you learn here, figure out which search terms work, which ones don't, and take it to other databases. Now, one more thing to show you when I'm here before we leave this database. Remember I said that you can limit to full text on the left, but you don't have to, right? Because what you'll find is that these find it buttons will show you if something is full text elsewhere, if it's available, right? So if you come across something that you're interested in and it's not full text in this database, you can click that and it will tell you whether or not it's full text in a different database. And it will take you to this page. And in this case, this item is not. But if it were available in another database, it would have a link to that database. And then you would be able to click on it and it would take you to the article. And that one's not available either. But trust me, we'll try one more and then we'll move on. I had this mapped out and now I can't find it. Okay, here we go. So this one is available in another location and we can click that. And unfortunately, normally they take you directly to the article. This one took us to the archive dates. So we can look and we see that the publication date is 2020, volume 63, issue 4. So 2020, volume 63, issue 4. And our title is Successful Yet Precarious. And then our page number is 653. We can scroll through and we have our article here with the PDF on the left. Okay. So If it's not available in the database here, you can click the Find It. It'll tell you whether or not it's available elsewhere. You can click that. And in this case, we had to navigate to it. Most of the time, it takes you straight to it. But in this case, we navigated to it, and here we are. Okay? So, especially depending on what your topic is, if you're not getting a ton of results, don't limit to full text. The Find It button will help you find it elsewhere. Okay. So the databases we looked at are Opposing Viewpoints, and we've looked at Academic Search Premier. Again, you're not limited to those. You can use whatever. You can use the other databases that are listed here. You can always refer back to the research guides list. And if your topic falls under education or falls under biology or business or anything like that, or political science, you can go to any of those research guides and look at the databases that are listed there and apply the basic concepts that we've learned here, combining search terms and looking for those limiters. Each database has a different general interface, so it may look different, but usually the way that you interact with it is pretty consistent. Now, I did mention that when you're searching for information online using Google, there are a couple of things that you can do, right? Let's say I just search model minority and I get 171 million results, which is a lot. So I scroll through, and if there's anything that stands out to me, like I probably will read the Wikipedia entry. Again, Wikipedia, I know people are very down on it. It is not something that you would use as a source, right? But it helps you get information about your topic so that you understand it. But then you can also scroll down to the references at the end and see what's listed in the references. There may be things there that you could use as sources. So Wikipedia is a good jumping off point to just get you started, but also to lead you in directions of potential sources. And just anything here that looks like it could potentially be useful or from like what we would talk about as a credible source, like major publications like Time Magazine, NPR, right? Things like that. We have something from University of Texas, right? So you could go through Harvard, anything that looks like it could potentially be from a reputable website or organization might be something to look at. But you can also target specific information. There is a neat little thing where you do cite : and then you can do like a stem. So cite : .gov, right? So if you type in your search term and then do cite : .gov, you're telling Google that you want only government information. And so we search that and we see that everything here ends in .gov, everything in our results list. So we go from 117 million to just under 5 million, which is still a lot, but this is just government information. And this is from the National Institute of Health. Model Minority at Risk, Express Needs of Mental Health by Asian American Young Adults. This is published in 2009, and this is the full text of this article, right? So this could potentially be something that might be useful to me. Okay, if this were my if I were doing research here, I would probably send this to myself, right? So using the cite : .gov, I was able to find an article or research published by the National Institute of Health, right? And again, we have more things like that from PubMed. ERIC is an education database, or is government research related to education. Library of Congress, from the White House archives. So there's a lot of stuff here that could potentially be useful to me. Another thing that you can do with the cite : is to look up articles or items from specific websites or publications. So let's say I wanted to see if New York Times had done coverage on this concept. I could do cite : nytimes.com, and all the results in my list come from the New York Times. Okay, so if I wanted to see again how New York Times was covering this concept, I could type in cite : nytimes.com. If I wanted to combine coverage, model minority, I could do cite colon and let's say Fox News. Oh, if at first you get 0 results, check your spelling. All right, model minority, cite colon, foxnews.com. And here, again, all of my results come from Fox News. Okay. So when you're searching for information online, remember I said there's a ton of stuff out there, and most of it's not going to be very helpful for academic research. But with little tips like the cite colon, you can target specific information that you know has a better chance of being useful to you than other information. So limiting to government websites or limiting to specific websites or publications. These are all ways that you can, this is a way that you can go about limiting to those kinds of things, right? Another thing that you can do, if we just take the cite colon off and then click news. And a lot of times what you'll get here, oh, let me take the Fox News off. Model minority, limited to news. You may sometimes get a lot of local newspapers, a lot of regional newspapers. But again, we've got a lot of different news sources here that we can refer to. All right. So back to the home page. I will send, your professor has this video, obviously, that she's sharing with you, and she will also have a copy of the worksheet that she can send to you that you can refer to. Again, you don't have to print off the worksheet. You can just follow along on a piece of paper. But you have these resources available to you. You have the website. You also have access to librarians. And I've told you how you can get in touch with us. By all means, if you need help with research or if you need help with citations, please reach out to us and we're more than happy to help. In the meantime, I hope you have a good week. Good luck with your research and happy searching.